Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Heart Warriors. I'm Gemma Star. This is a series I've been inspired and guided to do thanks to my energetic connection with Kata Judah, which is this rock formation in Central Australia. It's the sacred masculine site, and it's very close to Uluru, which is the sacred feminine site. What I'm here to do is give a platform to our men to share their experiences, to speak to men, to share their journey into the heart, and also for us women to be able to understand their journey a bit better. Today's guest is a young man from the UK, and his name is JotePrakash Singh. I saw JotePrakash on a Facebook Live with another man, and I'd never heard anyone speak about emotions, well, especially a man, articulate the emotional journey as well as he did. And so straight away I sent him an invite onto the show, because I feel that this articulation of emotions is so important for men that maybe don't have the tools or capacity to do it at the moment, to help understand their journey. So my greatest pleasure to welcome JotePrakash to Heart Warriors. Hello, JotePrakash. Welcome to Heart Warriors.
Hi, Gemma. Really great to be here.
Whereabout in the UK are you?
I'm in just a little town called Bealby. It's like near York, which is near Leeds. If people don't know the UK at all, maybe Leeds is the closest big city. Yeah.
Oh, nice one. Can you give us a little insight into the man you are today?
Yeah, great question. I feel like I've really overcome a lot of anxiety in my life. Like, one of the things that's most prevalent for me in the space I'm in at the moment is how little I suffer from anxiety now. That I can walk in a room and just sort of breathe deeply and feel okay about being around a lot of other people, when it used to be such a challenge. I would say a big aspect of my life is my practice and my devotion to my practice, to my morning routine and my meditation and Kundalini yoga and prayer. Just like looking back even just a few years of how difficult it used to be to get myself to my mat and meditate, and how much of a joy it is now to get myself to my mat and meditate, and how I'd actually miss it if I don't do it, and how I actually get a lot of enjoyment when it used to be a right slog, and it used to be like my mind just fighting with me the whole way through. So yeah, it's really beautiful actually to reflect on that, because I think in the journey we can often just go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing without actually looking back and being like, wow, actually look how far I've come already, and look at how much has changed. And yeah, it's a lovely thing to sit and do. Thank you.
You spoke about your anxiety. Was that a challenge for you when you were a young child through till recently?
Yeah, actually, I was super blessed. I was home educated when I was a young boy, and that obviously led to me not needing to put myself in so many social situations like we are forced to do if you're at school. So I was able to just hang out with people that I liked and just hang out in spaces that felt relaxing and safe. So we would go to different home education groups, but it'd be very different energy than, I guess, school. And I did actually go into school at the age of 12. So I did actually then I went into school, mainly because there wasn't many people my age home educated at that time, but that's changed now. There's a lot more people that do home educate. So yeah, I think when I went back into school, not being prepared for that level of just energy and nervous system overwhelm, and there's so many people. I do remember walking into school that first day and seeing this like swarm of kids going into class, and just like really, yeah, feeling overwhelmed, and then this anxiety, and yeah, and then going into later years, it's not been massive. Like I've not gone to that space of like panic attacks and things that I know a lot of people do suffer with, but there's always been a bubbling anxiety there for me until recent, I suppose.
So how did you get out of that state of anxiety? First of all, when you were in that state in your younger years, was there anything that you could do to get yourself out of it at that stage? And two, now, what is it that you're doing that you don't suffer from anxiety anymore?
Yeah, so when I was younger, I used to do a lot of physical exercise. That was always great, like parkour, breakdancing. When I got myself into actually just moving my body, I remember then being a few moments I can remember doing parkour with friends and just feeling super free and like confident and things like that. So that was great. And then now, yeah, breath, breathing, reminding myself to breathe. One thing that helped me was a quote I heard once about anxiety is basically the same as excitement, just the mind defining it as something different. When you just see it as like it's just like your heart's racing, you're getting the blood flowing. It's basically the same as what happens when you get excited.
Yeah, it's good.
So that helps, and just actually, there's no way around the hard work and the graft of having a spiritual practice, having a daily breathwork practice, meditation practice to actually gain that ability to, when your mind is going and flying away with you like horses running off in different directions, to actually have the ability to kind of bring it all together, center myself. Qigong has been great. Kundalini yoga has been great for that.
Okay.
Yeah, and one last thing on that was mega actually was working with this hypersensitivity, like this feeling, and it's been a big thing even after committing myself to yoga and meditation and all this stuff. I still found myself going into spaces and feeling really hypersensitive and just like noticing. And I think it comes from trauma, of just tracking what people are doing, tracking people's facial expressions and their body movements to such a hyper aware state that it can be, you notice something like a little twitch of the eye and you think that it's danger, or you think that something is wrong, or am I getting something wrong? Did I mess up my words? And then that stream of thoughts could really run away with itself. So yeah, just kind of like this practice of constantly noticing first when I'm out of my center, and then doing whatever it takes to bring myself back into my center, and prioritizing that above everything else. So like, it's like, I don't need to please anybody else. If I'm not in my center, I'm not going to be able to serve anyone else. So it's just reminding myself, like, come to the center, and then from there, I can serve, I can give, I can receive, I can connect. All the good stuff comes from that place.
What was it that got you into your Kundalini yoga and breath work? Was it the anxiety, or was there another point in your life that brought that on?
Yeah, that's a fairly long story in itself. And it was, I was 17 and I began to like up my substance intake. So I started like smoking more marijuana and things, and I was drinking more, and I was going out, I was partying more, and this kind of escalated. And every time I would smoke, something would just happen in my brain where I would be like, it would just really open me, like, and I would feel really confident, and I would feel really amazing, and I'd be dancing around the room, and people called it like I was called Tom Libby back then before I changed my name, and so they call it the Libby Show, when I would jump up and like just start like doing voices and acting, and I used to love it. And so it kind of escalated and escalated. But it hit this peak one time when I smoked in public for the first time, and I was at college. And what happened was I don't know why that was the moment where it all just popped. But I started walking back into college, and it was your classic sort of spiritual awakening moment. And it really did feel like it happened in like one moment where it just went whoom, and the colours exploded in front of my eyes, and I could hear things that I couldn't hear before, and I heard this humming sound, and I just started to like have this overwhelming sense of, why is the world so grey? I want to do something about it. I'm going to bring some life and music. And then what followed was like me taking my guitar into college, and like I just lost all fear. It was like in one moment, all the fear just vanished. And in its place was this huge sense of like, I just want to give and serve and offer my voice and my music. And so I take my guitar into college and just start playing it in the cafe, in the wherever I was. I just pick out my guitar, and I just found music was this way of connecting. And some people were kind of freaked out by it, and other people were like totally like, I can't believe what are you doing, man? This is crazy. This is awesome. Like you'd sing along in the middle of college in just hallways and stuff. Yeah. So this then rose and rose, and what started happening was like so I didn't actually smoke anymore. I didn't need to, because I was on this kind of like getting higher and higher just naturally, and like could feel like I've really gone into it over the last like few years to try and understand what actually happened to me. And it's really just chemicals moving through my body, and endorphins just being released. And then I kind of stopped eating so much, and then I stopped sleeping. Like, so I just was full of this energy. So like in any sort of ancient practices, fasting and fasting on sleep, give this vision quest. It's like if you're ever doing a vision quest, you're fasting, you're trying not to sleep. It's like the world starts to like shift, and your awareness starts to heighten, and the senses all explode a little bit more. And that started happening with me. So over the course of like a couple of weeks, I was barely sleeping, barely eating, and I was just kept getting higher and higher, and until it really reached a crux where my nervous system couldn't take that anymore. So my nervous system just was like, when the body says no, and it was just like, we're done here. And then I think then my survival mechanisms must have kicked in, and this sort of the way I protected myself was to get paranoid about it all, and then kind of go into this like paranoia and freeze response. So my nervous system was kind of shut down. And I remember my mum took me to Scotland, and we went for a week actually in Scotland, and I was like a zombie. So after this, like up and up and up, it just all like, it was like, boom, done. So I just became like a shell, like a zombie, just walking around, not knowing where I was. Like, so what was an awakening thing, or felt like an awakening, swiftly became psychosis, essentially, where I was like, or the doctors would call it that, but it was still part of this process. And I was very blessed to be held, because my mum, who was a Kundalini yoga teacher at the time, had some idea of how to hold me in that space. So I was getting me back eating good food and root vegetables, and hugging trees, and walking barefoot on beaches, and just grounding, and carrot and ginger juice, and rubbing garlic on my feet at night, having lots of salt baths, and just basically getting back in my body, because I was so dissociated from my body. Yeah, so then moving out of that whole thing was this like sense of I just wanted to understand what had happened to me. Finished college, and I was gifted a place to do Kundalini yoga teacher training at a holistic center we were running. So my mum was running, and I was just like, I just kind of felt this pull to I nearly said no. I remember like I was nearly like, nah, that's mum's thing, that's weird. And I think it was because I'd had that psychosis/awakening experience. I think it was maybe 6 months back from when I was offered this play, the space on the training. It was like, actually, I do believe there's something out there, and this could be really good for me. So I went into it and just really devoted myself to the practice.
Right. We might get into the specifics of that later. I'd like to go back to your story you just shared. And so you were on this natural high, and then you described it as a fall into the darkness. One, what caused that? And two, can you describe what it felt like when you were in that lowest point?
Yeah. What really sparked it was, I remember laying in bed one night and wanting to go to sleep. And what had happened before that was I was quite happy being awake, because I was like really creative and dancing around the living room and drawing and playing video games, but like enjoying it 100 times percent. And then I just remember like a few weeks in, lying down in bed and being like, okay, time for bed now, I'm gonna go. And then like sitting bolt upright, full of like, every time down to go to sleep, it was like electricity just coursed through my whole body, and I was like, boo. And I realized in that moment that even though I wanted to go to sleep, I actually couldn't. And that was what shifted it. It was like this like sense of losing control. And then the fear really started to set in at that point. And the lowest, I think the lowest point was definitely like during that week in Scotland. I remember spitting blood into a sink, and like I might have just bit my tongue or something, right? But I spit blood into a sink, and it was like this red and the white, and just these. I couldn't believe what was going on, and I'd Googled, and I just recommend not Googling your symptoms in this situation, because it said, I remember it said, if you overthink yourself into a psychosis, you can get a brain hemorrhage and actually kill yourself. And so I had this when I spat blood into the sink, I was really convinced I was having a brain hemorrhage, and I was absolutely terrified. I just remember just like, I was convinced I was dying. And every night I went to sleep, over the course of that week in Scotland, every single night, I really had come to this belief that I wasn't going to wake up in the morning.
Were you scared of death at the time?
There was this period that I was scared. I was really scared of death at that time. But when it happened every night for like a week or so, and I still woke up in the morning, it's something, the fear started to slip away slightly, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think that was like part of this process of overcoming fear of death. And waking up on the morning, and I'd often wake up about like 6 o'clock in the morning, almost the same time every day on this week. And I'd wake up because I'd hear my mum in the other room chanting a mantra for healing, and she would chant this mantra for me every morning. This makes me feel emotional when I think about it. And it was this mantra calling in the fourth Sikh guru, whose name is Guru Ram Das, and he was the guru of compassion and healing and unconditional love. And so I would get myself up, I'd kind of like sit up out of this bed and almost like crawl, because my nervous system was so like, ugh. I just almost crawl, like stagger into my mum's room and see her there, sat on her mat, like dressed all in white with a turban on, and she just looked like an angel. And in my kind of adult brain state, I just saw this white angelic presence, and I'd go and snuggle up in her bed and just listen to her chanting. And yeah, I really think that kind of pulled me through, you know. I really feel that pulled me through.
Did you ever go back to the smoking marijuana and alcohol?
Yeah, I tried. I did. I tried. I thought I convinced myself that it had nothing to do with that. And I said to Mum, you know, because when you're on the other side and you're like, you feel good again, you know, and I felt normal again. My mate's still doing it. I'm still, why would I not? You know, it wasn't anything to do with that. It was something completely different. My mum was like, how can you say that? You know, shut up, Mum, you don't know. It's fine. I'm more in control now. I won't do it the same way. So I went back to it for a period of time. But what happened was it was just never the same after that. It was just like there was this edginess to it. It wasn't like pure fun anymore. It was like there was this like subtle paranoia that I was gonna drop into psychosis again.
Right.
Every time I smoked. Drinking less so, I guess, because it's a depressant, right? And it's like less of a stimulant and things. But whenever I smoked, what happened with the smoking and drinking was coming into the Kundalini yoga and the training. We had the chance to commit to a yogic diet, and so I took on 40 days of this green diet. I was eating literally just green food and not green Skittles or green food coloring things. Everyone asked the same question.
Plants.
Everyone said that. So yeah, just nice healthy green fruit and veg and things, and beans and all that. And so I didn't smoke, didn't drink for that 40 days, obviously, and really committed to that thing. My body felt so pure and so cleansed.
Wow.
And I went and tried to eat meat and tried to eat sugar and tried to drink again. And it was rejected. I was like, I actually had a spoonful of spaghetti bolognese that my dad had made. Before the diet, I used to love this. I was like, absolutely one of my favorite meals. I had a spoonful of this spaghetti bolognese and I literally felt sick immediately. And I just had to say, sorry, Dad, I can't actually eat this. And it was such a addiction or like unhealthy habits with the mind, but actually it was my body that was leading.
Yeah. Oh, you've been breaking up a little bit. I hope it's not my end. I want to go back and understand smoking marijuana, only because I've only ever tried it twice and it made me feel sick. So I've never been into it, but I know a lot of people are. And I'm wondering, in your opinion, does it block emotions or does it enhance emotions? Like, can you talk to people who are regular smokers and give us your opinion of what it's doing to emotions and the healing process?
Such a great topic. I'm so inspired to talk about this. For me, what happened was it opened me up for the first stages. It was like when I first started smoking, it felt amazing. I was emotionally wild, free. I was much more tactile. I was much more confident. So it was like this, and I will say this is for me, this illusion of being more open, but that it was unsustainable for a long period of time, because the more I started doing it, and when I started doing it like on a regular basis, every week with my mates, that kind of thing, it's like there's this beautiful video, maybe people have seen it, a really powerful video of this like bird running along, and it gets like a little, and it's supposed to symbolize drugs or whatever it is, and it sucks up this little like colorful liquid, and it's running along the thing, and the first time it drinks it up, it like flies into the air and it's in this amazing psychedelic wonderland, right? And then it lands back on the earth and it lands really gracefully. It's amazing. And then it carries on walking and then sucks up the next liquid and then it's a little bit less high that time, you know, and it comes crashing down a little bit harder. And then it goes again. And the next time it drinks it up, boom, it's only shot up like however high, 6 feet in the air, and then boom, comes crashing down even harder, to the point where it's drinking the liquid just to try and get its head up, you know, and like just to keep kicking. So I really, really liked that as an analogy of over time, the more I took substances as a way of like externally creating that openness, externally creating that confidence, the more you then actually go below your baseline, like of, so I've got this like confidence baseline, let's say, you know, and then over time, what I felt happening was actually now I'm less confident, just as my natural self, and I'm taking marijuana now just to get to my baseline, you know, and then it just, for me, it's never going to be sustainable. The only thing that's sustainable in terms of, if we want to talk about proper peace and true contentment and joy that lasts, it's got to come from the inside out. And yeah, I'm super grateful to the plant, you know, super grateful, because it did actually give me that experience of what I call the big trip. It sparked it, you know, and it gave me like a, as Ram Dass says, you know, it gives, or Ram Dass's guru said, it gives a glimpse. Psychedelics can give a glimpse into the room of the divine. But in order to like actually open the door and step inside and live inside that space, it's the daily practice. It's the yoga, the meditation, and the daily breathwork, the things that you can inspire within you, to give you that feeling, and nervous system regulation, and clear your blocks and all that stuff. So yeah, grateful for it, but also like letting it go in order to actually stand on my own 2 feet, you know?
Yeah. And does that feel more empowering to leave all those substances behind and just be high on life and your practices?
Yeah, I always say to myself, I want to be happy if I'm on a desert island. I want to be happy with nothing.
Yeah.
I want to be happy. I want to feel creative without needing stimulus apart from breath that we've always got. And I want to feel, and yeah, being high on life is one thing, but also like just being balanced to the point where I can to my grief and just live. Because for me, it's about the yin and the yang. It's the full spectrum of emotions. That's what means something to me, is embracing the full spectrum. And that comes by, like, because I think we numb out, you know, if we're going into like a lower state or a lower feeling, it's like we can drink or we can smoke or we can take anything to like override that, but there's always something to be learnt in those murky depths. There's always some blessing in that grief or in that pain, and until we feel it, it's just going to keep coming back, worse and worse each time, you know. It's the same with anxiety. If you try and block it, or you know, you're trying to, maybe a lot of people, I know a lot of use marijuana to help with anxiety or whatever, but it's gonna be a crutch, right? And at some point we've got to learn to move without that crutch. And that's the space where I'm in now. It's like, I guess chocolate would be my thing. Sometimes I feel a bit stressed. It's chocolate, right? Like, yeah. It's nice raw chocolate, but it's still always going to be something, but it just becomes less and less destructive. Yeah. And yeah, I do feel that there's nothing in me that feels the need to turn towards any substances or intoxicants when I feel anxious. It would be like, okay, I need to lie down and do 20 minutes of breath work, or I need to do my meditation or something like that, right?
That's great. What is masculinity to you? And, you know, I mean, I'm really interested to hear your generation. And I know that you do workshops on sacred sexuality, masculine, feminine. So give us, please, your definition of masculinity.
Yeah. Well, it's not exactly what Andrew Tate and all that talked about. Do you know Andrew Tate? Yeah, it's a guy on.
But that's
Become
why
big
I've
on
asked
TikTok.
you for yours. And, you know, this Heart Warrior series, you know, going to interview 100 different men that are aware of the healing journey. So if I ask that question, I'd probably get 100 different answers. So I'm interested in your answer.
Yeah, totally. For me, it's about being the rudder on the ship. So I kind of like that analogy of seeing the feminine is the wind in the sails, and the masculine is the rudder. So like the masculine as an energy, because we all have it inside of us, different volumes. So like I guess like maybe I am more masculine because I'm in a male body than my wife, you know, but she might be more masculine at different times, and that's great. I guess I feel that I'm like predominantly, or my core energy is yang. So my core energy, maybe 80% is feels like I'm more comfortable when I'm in my yang, and that for me is the directional energy. It's the that mission. Yeah, what is masculinity to me? It's such a good question. And I think it does keep shifting and evolve. It just keeps shifting and evolving and changing as well.
Yeah.
Um,
When you are, how do you feel when you feel you're at your most masculine?
yeah, I feel grounded. I feel unfazed in the eye.
It's broken up.
In my relationship, that's a big thing. Like just to
Can you just
not be so
repeat?
reactive to.
Okay, it's just that you did break up a little
Did,
bit.
did it cut off?
We've got a storm coming. It could be that. I'm sorry if it is, but I did miss your last point. Sorry.
It's fine. I was saying that when I feel in my masculine, I'm less reactive, just less reactive to everything. My work, my relationship, things that my wife might bring to me in the moment is like to be able to hold it all and contain it. So I'd say containment. If I had to choose one word, that would be what the masculine represents to me. It's the riverbanks that allow the river to flow through. It's the chalice that holds the sacred waters. You know, it's that's what it means to me.
Is that a state of being you always were, or is that something you had to work on, or is that something that as you healed your emotional wounds came organically?
All three of those pretty like interlaced, I suppose. Yeah, like I feel that the emotional wounds start there, like the emotional wounds and things as I've overcome my fears and things like that, or some of it. It has allowed me to step forward into my masculine energy more. But yeah, in terms of working on it, it has been like a huge amount of focus and dedication. I mean, even just in my morning practice, for instance, I'm getting up at 4:30 most mornings, doing 2.5 hours of practice. Not because I want to like, I'm also kind to myself when I need to be, but just because I know that discipline equals freedom. I really feel that. And the more that I just hold that discipline, the more free I actually become in my life. because of the meditation, I'm releasing some of that stuff. But yeah, like in terms of that kind of commitment, that's definitely been a big factor in activating the masculine energy within me. And I think I would say I was predominantly more yin when I was younger, you know, so there was a balancing that had to happen as I started to bring more awareness to it. So I was predominantly more like, and I still definitely have that inside of me. It's a wonderful part, I guess, going with the flow and really like the more creative aspect and things like that.
Do you think society is helping our young men to find this healed, healthy masculinity within themselves, or does it feel like an uphill battle?
I feel that in society, I think some aspects of society very much like diminish young men and cause a lot of challenge for that. And I think as we move into this space of men being held accountable, I think like because women are stepping forward a lot and holding men accountable for their actions, a lot of men can associate that with this like idea that masculinity is bad. It's like, because if we've never felt healthy, loving masculinity, then we can just perceive the whole thing to be like throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like give it, screw masculinity, full stop, you know. And I feel that's really unhealthy for us, because I feel what the work is to connect back into masculinity in a healthy, balanced way, you know. And I this idea of containment, it really relates to, and it's been such a learning and a growth piece for me in relationship with my wife, about like being this containing energy for her, just like this feeling of creating safety for her, or creating safety for us as well, for myself, creating safety for my own fearful, anxious parts, right? Has been like how to create a container that's like got breathing space, that's not like suffocating. And the problem, the challenge is that we felt this masculine energy in society has been so suffocating. I mean, I feel so much rage even just like connecting into that, of how like, think about the last couple of years, it's like I didn't give consent for any of that shit,
right?
And yet it was like the government and everyone else was me stuff and forcing me to do this, forcing me to do that. That's unhealthy masculine, right? That's like forceful. If it was like, and the one key thing here is that there's consent. That's right. It's like, if I to being contained, I don't. Have I frozen again?
Yeah, I can. That's okay.
You could.
It just, it's saying my internet connection is unstable. I think it's the weather. I think we'll just keep rolling. We've still got, we've still got plenty of time. So continue, please.
Yeah. I forgot where did you?
We were talking about the last 2 years, and you know that that aspect of unhealthy masculinity, which I think is a really good representation of, you know, I mean, basically it was an abusive relationship, wasn't it, between, you know, us, and limiting our freedoms and our expressions. So that's a good way to look at it. And what would you say to young men now, maybe 10 years younger than yourself, that are struggling with the identity of masculinity, because even now, one, maybe half a generation younger than you, they've been hit with all this transgender stuff and everything. So I think they're just getting so confused, you know, and maybe, you know, someone relatively young, they'd like to hear what you have to say, that you've come out the other side.
Yeah, this is obviously a sensitive topic, and this is my opinion on things. So it's not, I'm not saying it's the gospel. But I really feel that, you know, if I have felt trauma in my body as a man, and if I've started to like become feeling shameful about being a man, and someone gives me the opportunity to become a woman, how do I know? And I'm not saying this is everyone, but it could be that I would take that in order to feel less about myself as a man.
Right. Yeah.
Like it would solve some of these problems.
Yeah.
And I that's not everyone. I'm just like really just throwing ideas into the wind, because I don't know, but I know that I felt shame for being a man. And when I stopped feeling shame, and as I've worked through that, I started to just reclaim that masculinity. It's like I wouldn't want anything different in my body, right? And I think so many young men growing up, there is this and we've got this sexual energy as well, right? And we've got this, you're young, you've got this like sexual energy coursing through your body, and it's like you're at your most fertile, you primary, and sort of, if you think biologically, you're literally just wanting to impregnate everything that you see. That's your mission, and that's biologically your mission. And so when you've got that swirling around inside of you, and you're finding yourself getting lustful, and then you throw porn into the mix, and then that muddies the waters, because that's like almost like a culturally normal thing to do. And you've got this like distorted view on sex, distorted view on like these men that you see in porn videos, and the way that they basically just like abuse women a lot of the time. I mean, I did an experiment, and I hadn't watched porn for like 5 years, and I watched it again fairly recently, and I was actually just like, the first thing I thought was, I can't believe how quickly he's entered her. I can't believe that happened that quickly. That must be awful for her. and apparently, from what I've heard, and maybe that's not all the time, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of women, they're literally just going through the motions, and they're training their bodies to open in that way against the will of their natural flow of their nervous system. And the way that the way that I do understand, to reading more and see, the female body opens in this slow, gentle kind of way. You don't see that.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're back. Yeah.
With that sort of, I'm back.
Yeah.
With the way I see it is like, when that sexual energy come a young boy, the passage to help him like understand what's happening. He's going to feel lustful. He's going to feel predatory. He's going to feel aggressive. Testosterone is going to start rushing around the body. Not going to know what to do with it. It's not going to know how to channel it. And we're, you know, some young guys are really blessed, like, because you've got sports, so you've got some. If they've got a real strong passion for those things, you've got somewhere to channel that energy. but yeah, the majority of us, it's just like, and even then, it's still just like not talked about. It's like the only talk you get on sex for a lot of young boys is like crappy sex ed in school and maybe like an awkward conversation with your parents.
Yeah.
And it's like, we need to get our young boys out into the forest and like just sit around a fire and talk about sex, completely like shameless, completely nitty gritty details. All the older men telling stories about what they've gone through. You know, I'm getting tingles just thinking about that, because I could imagine what it would have done for me if I was 13 years old, having that. And then when that lust comes up, what we're gonna do? We're gonna feel shame about it, right? Because it's like not the way that we want to be, but the biology in our body, and having nowhere to channel it, and not knowing any sort of sexual kung fu practices or tantra to actually transmute that energy. It's it's a sticky one. Literally, no pun intended.
Is that the shame you were talking about a little while ago when you said that men feel shame? And I know you can't generalize, but is that what you were intending? Shame
Yeah,
for their sexual energy or for watching porn? What could you expand, please?
I think that would be, if I speak for myself, that's been the root of my deepest core wounds and shame, you know, of how I interact with women, basically, you know, just feeling so undesirable at different points in my life, and then that shame then distorting my love for women into lust for women, to the point where, I mean, I'm sure I'm not alone here, but just to the point where I'm like literally just any woman I see walking down the street that's I think is sexy is just like completely come out of my center, and just like, and it's still played out for me even when I came into the yoga meditation world, that on the spiritual path, if you like, even that wasn't really talked about very much first few years, and it would still be playing out this like subtle kind of lust and things. And actually at that time I made a resolution with myself to be celibate. So when I was 18, I said I'm going to be celibate until I this out. And the key part of my journey was actually taking that time out from women and from relationships and from sexual connection, just to like understand myself and know who I am, know what I've got to offer. And I said to myself, the next person I get in a relationship going to be the one that I love. You know, I'm going to have a loving. So that's exactly what's happened. Spent about 2 years celibate, and then my wife came into my life.
So were you still watching porn when you were celibate?
I actually, so again, when I was 18, the porn fell away. So
was that a conscious decision or another organic one that you let, like with the marijuana and the alcohol, that sort of just
organic?
Fell out? Yeah,
everything, all of the addiction style things, and I say addiction lightly because I've seen people that suffer really, really badly with addiction on a level up than anything that I think I really struggled with. But I was definitely like hooked on it, and I was doing it every day. You know, I was watching porn every.
Oops, lost you. Lost him. I'll just pause. Oh, you're back. Oh. Okay. This is a shame because we're losing a little bit, but it's what it is. I'm sorry.
It keeps coming in and out though, and it's we're getting most. Are
you getting it at your end as well?
Only freezes every now and again, and it's just for a few moments.
Yeah. All right. So are young men pressured to get into porn, like from an early age?
I definitely was. I mean, all my mates were all my mates started watching it before me. My older brother was on it, you know. His mates were all telling me about it. And
How old are we talking about?
it comes from this. I mean, I was 10. I was like 10 years old, because a mate from the village was super excited to come over and show us video stuff.
Is it the access to devices that makes the difference, because everyone's got a phone connected to the internet? Do you think that's made it more accessible to younger people, or was it always accessible in one way or another?
Well, obviously pre-internet, it wasn't.
Yeah.
But like, and it'd be like magazines and what have you. But like, this is 14 years ago now, so I was 10 years old, and I didn't have a smartphone. I had like a little Motorola thing or a Nokia. And so we just logged onto the computer, right? We just waited until mum was out, and then got on the computer. And I remember I was actually like, I was a dog, so I had to like check when mum was coming back. It was my job. So it's the accessibility, I'm sure, doesn't help things, but we would always find a way.
For me to understand, from that point, you felt shameful about it. Am I correct?
It's a great question. I wouldn't say I was aware enough to actually feel much about it. It was just such a pattern. I think in order to actually, I think the shame was building. I think it's like that just idea of, I feel like I'm doing something dirty and wrong. Like, I wouldn't have been able to label it as shame.
Yeah.
I might have been quite helpful between shame and guilt, and how it can actually be quite helpful sometimes to feel a bit of like guilt about what you're doing if it's not serving you, in order to break apart from it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it started to just like be like mold that grows in your bathroom. It just starts very small. It's like little spores, and then it just spreads, you know. And that's how it felt like for me, was this, as I started doing it more and more, it was like just this sort of thing that I would always hide. And shame lives in the shadows, and until we illuminate it and talk about it, it lives there, and it grows. And what we resist persists. So it started to just become such a hidden thing. It would be embarrassing. I guess like embarrassment is like shame's younger cousin, right? You know, it's like you just feel really embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
And then that would grow into something deeper, shame, you know.
The reason this really interests me is because, are you aware of David Hawkins' scale of consciousness, the book Power versus Force? Now, he put shame and guilt as the lowest two emotional frequencies. And so now when you're telling your story, I'm thinking, wow, from the age of 10, you and other boys are getting already into the shame and guilt. And how do you get out? How do young boys get out of that? Are you lucky that you got out of it? Or is this something that young men are still holding on to into their later years?
Yeah. I mean, I feel equally blessed that I had tools, and I had my mum, who was shifting a lot of family patterns at that time, through her practices of Kundalini yoga, and she started Gestalt psychotherapy as well, and became a psychotherapist and doing her own therapy. So that's what we can do for kids, you know, do our own work on our own shit, right? You know, do our own therapy and start doing our own daily practice and embodiment and breathwork and all the good stuff. Yeah, I think whilst I was blessed, there also comes a moment where no one's going to take you out of that. No one can just grab your hand and like pull you out of that space, unless you decide within yourself that you want it to end. There was a moment where I had to like have a firm word with myself and be like, look at yourself. Come on. It's not what you want from life. You don't want to be trapped in this bathroom, jacking off all your life force energy, right? There was a moment where that actually had to have that firm word with myself and take myself out through quite rigorous sort of disciplines and things. And like in 12-step programs, it's like this also recognition that, so first step is recognize you've got a problem, got something going on, and you don't want to have that. So you just like, okay. The second step is where you reach out for help. So there was a lot of like sharing. So start just talking about things with other people to get support, and just start being really authentic and create, particularly brotherhood. Just to be able to talk about it in brotherhood, that was a game changer. So I started like running men's retreats and camps and things with men, and just be able to talk about things freely. And such a great source of support. Oh, I can't even say how amazing that's been. It's just been amazing. And like my connection to God, to spirit, to my higher self, you know, when they talk about that in addiction programs, just giving your addiction up to the universe, up to God. And just like, basically you're giving your power to the addiction. When you're in the addiction, you're giving your power to it. And it's like pulling back a bow and like choosing what target you're going to shoot it at. And one of the targets is addiction, and you can use all your energy to keep shooting that. Or like there's like this sort of feeling of like shifting direction and then sending your energy. So for me, it was Kundalini yoga and meditation. It could be different for each person, right? For me, it was mainly the yoga and meditation. I just started like pulling my energy away from the addiction and just started like focusing it in on my yoga and meditation practice.
That's fascinating. JotePrakash, once you stopped the pornography, how did your attitudes towards women change? Did you start to see them differently? And when you got into this relationship with your wife, did you treat her differently than you treated other women? And do you relate that to the absence of pornography?
In short, yes. And it's still very much a learning journey, and there's still so much residue, shame and lust that I'm still just sort of chipping away at. Kind of like the idea of having a stone or a clay Buddha, and then you chip a little bit and you see a little piece of gold. You actually see gold underneath it. Actually, well, it's good as gold. And then it's like slowly chipping away at the whole Buddha to reveal the. So it's like that, chipping away, and things are a lot more easeful now. I'm really aware of when I objectify her, when I see her as an object, something that I can possess. I love the analogy of like, you see a rose, it's beautiful, you can smell it, you can enjoy it. If you pick it and try to possess it, it starts to die pretty quick. So I can feel that. I can feel it still within me. I can still feel this unhealthy masculine energy that comes forwards, that starts to control her. But it's coming from I guess it's coming from this space of like wanting to contain more than control, but not quite knowing the subtle nuances of the differences between those two things. Right. And I think I had a friend actually, who was a woman, who said, contain the relationship, but don't contain her. Like, as a man, you have the capacity to contain the relationship and direct it to a certain extent. You're working on it together, you know. you are co-creating a thing together.
That's beautiful. So what advice have you got for men who want to feel a bit stuck in their life? You know, they're in a place that they want to change things, but they're not quite sure how to go about it. I mean, obviously you found your path through Kundalini yoga, breathwork and meditation, but as you said, that's not for every man. And there's many ways up the mountain. How does a man find what works for him, what his path is?
Well, I think like, even if meditation is not your thing, I don't think you could escape from sitting with yourself. Like, I think that is a core fundamental thing of like, if you want to move forwards in your life, you've got to stop distracting yourself. So you don't need to call it meditation, but you need to spend time with yourself. You need to spend time in solitude, walking, exercising, sitting, you know, whatever it might be, and truly in solitude, where it's like you've not got your phone on, you're not listening to music or a podcast, you're just there with yourself. And I think the more that's going to feel for a lot of guys, and for me, when I first started doing that in meditation, just in stillness with nothing to distract myself, my mind went batshit crazy. I was like, it was awful. Even just 3 minutes, everything started hurting. It was like, I just remember I couldn't believe how awful everything felt just by sitting there not doing anything. So that's probably going to happen. It's probably part of it. It's part of the process. As soon as you stop distracting yourself, the brutal truth of it is, the longer you distract yourself more, the more it's going to cascade into you when you finally stop. And that's why a lot of people actually, when they get to a certain age, so you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? It's like they just don't want to even go there because it's too much. It's been too much pain, too much grief, too much rage that they've suppressed and projected out and blamed everyone else for, that it's almost too much to just turn around and see it all. But if people want to do the work, that's the step. You've got to just turn yourself around and see everything that you're trying to suppress, and see every aspect of your life that you're projecting onto other people and blaming other people for your problems. And then you've just got to take ownership. I mean, I'm still telling myself this. I'm enjoying hearing my own words here, because I'm still telling myself it after quite a few years of being very, very like focused on this stuff. I'm still constantly saying, okay, I'm now blaming that person for ruining my day, but actually I'm ruining my own day by letting myself get triggered by that.
Right.
And that's the step.
Yeah, I'm interested if you can break down that step in even smaller aspects of awareness. How, okay, so someone's spoiling my day. Take ownership of that. Take us through your thought process.
So to use this sort of standard analogy, so someone's cut me off in the car, right? Someone's cut me off in the car. My initial response, if I'm not aware, it would be to just be like triggered and to swear at them and be angry at them. And I think there's also, we can be too gentle. I think that definitely, like, we can lean too far to the other side and act like everything's okay when it's actually not. So let's say I do get angry about it. First thing I'm actually going to do is accept that I feel anger. So it's like, okay, it's actually okay to feel anger. But the second thing, if I'm in alignment in that moment, the second thing I'm going to do is own that anger as mine. And then I'm going to take myself into some emotional release tools.
Okay.
So that would be like making sound, screaming, or like having a moment of like, ah, or even like saying, like, usually swear words. Yeah. Swear words are the one. I mean, you can't beat it. It's just like, Be as pious as you want. Still, you're
Yeah.
never gonna
Oh,
you're
no,
never gonna get
it's,
out of
yeah.
this square.
Everything's got its moment. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. No vibration is a bad vibration. They all have everything, every word has a purpose, right? For the time and place.
So I took you
Um,
off track. I didn't mean to. So you were saying there's the verbal release, the noise sound.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Physical, something physical as well. Like, so in Kundalini yoga, there's a lot of stuff that, like, you might do something like a movement, like this, hands clenched in fists. Inhale out to the sides. Exhale back into the middle. Something like that can feel really like can really, if you're really like angry, something like just doing press ups until you collapse, or squats, or just running out of the door and running in your bare feet along the road as far as you can. I've done that before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or in the garden on all fours,
Yeah.
screaming and punching the earth. It just I think the body, when you just like let yourself feel anger and like have this intention that you release your anger in a clean way. So I started to set this intention. I release my anger in a clean way now. It's like this like sort of affirmation, so that my body takes over sometimes and it knows what it needs to do.
Yeah.
I start running around the house and where's the nearest pillow to just go beat down on? Where before I would actually just go straight to the wall, boom, and punch the wall. Okay, it's one way, but you're hurting yourself, and that's no good.
Yeah. And then you've got to
Take my
repair
head
the job on the other side. Repair the
Yeah,
hole in the wall.
exactly. So, and then usually what comes up for me then is actually like this. So if you've got to that surface level anger and you're managing to just connect to it and work through it, you'll drop slightly deeper. There'll be something underneath that. So there's like, I've got angry at this person in the car. That's not really why I'm angry. I'm angry because I don't feel loved by my wife. I'm angry because I'm not actually feeling satisfied in my business. No one's actually often angry at the thing that's in front of them. It's usually like years and years ago, I embarrassed myself in front of everyone and I'm still pissed off about it because I didn't process it back then.
Wow.
Or years and years ago, I was abused, or I experienced trauma. And now I live in this state of fear, and this fear is running my life. And because I don't know how to just sit with my fear, I just get angry as a way of like projecting that out onto everyone else.
Right. So that awareness is so important, isn't it? And as you said, there's always a deeper catalyst for our emotions than what we see on the surface, and just that awareness. So that was beautiful how you tied that up. So a man's aware that I'm always angry in traffic, but hey, maybe that's because I was abused as a child, or I'm worried about my business, or whatever. What does he do then? How does he's recognized there is another deeper wound. How does he go about healing that wound?
Yeah, and if we look in that wound in slightly more detail, because using that analogy of traffic, and this might be the same for other men, but the one thing that makes me more angry than anything else, if I had to put it into one word, is when I feel emasculated. Right. And like disempowered. It's like this biological thing of I'm supposed to be protecting my family, I'm supposed to have my shit together, and I'm a fucking failure. That's the kind of energy of it, and it just replays itself in all these different ways. So if I'm stuck in traffic, it's like, oh, I'm meant to be getting home for dinner, or I made a commitment and now I'm not going to meet that commitment, and I feel like I failed that person that I was. And so when that happens, and all these different scenarios that it plays out in, it's usually just boiling down to feeling out of control.
Yeah.
And so it's just about taking back that sense of control. It's a sense. It's a state of being. It's not really a. We can do everything that we can possibly do in our external world to feel in control. And if you go too far into that space of trying to control your external world, you're going to become a tyrant, or you're going to get OCD, or you're going to really just ruin your life by doing that too much. So there's a balance. Yes, I might need to declutter my desk. That might be one part of regaining control over myself.
Yeah.
But the way it happens for me is when I get that internal sense of stability, the decluttering of the desk actually blossoms out of that. Yes. Everything starts to be more in order and control and flow in my external world, because my internal world is more in flow and more stable. As within, so without, right? You can't escape that. And it's so funny when you're like, if you just see everything as that it's supposed to be that way, getting stuck in traffic is like this, like, I feel stuck in my life. Now I'm stuck in traffic. So I need to do something to just get myself a bit more unstuck in life. I've spent the last 3 days cleaning our marquee. We rented it out to a festival and it got grass stains on it. And my mum said, put some tarp down before you put the marquee up, because if it rains, it's gonna get stained. And I disregarded that the wisdom from the feminine and just decided to lay it all out. So I've been paying the price. And every in the last 3 days, there's been this like frustration and scrubbing. I end up just doing making it worse, and it's spreading the stain, and I have to do a real proper job of it. And it's just this like metaphor of like a lesson. There's always a lesson in everything. So it's really been this journey the last few days, just feeding into that of I can either get really annoyed at this whole experience, or I can see it for what it is. And actually, I did get annoyed and did get angry. I did actually fall on my hands and knees at one point and start crying. And that was all okay, because at least the emotions are still moving through. The one time when I would start to feel nervous about my life is if I start to get stagnant. Yeah. If the emotions are not flowing, that's when I'm like, oh no, I need to just take some stock of my life here, because I haven't cried for a few weeks, or I haven't been angry for a few weeks. I know it's coming, but it's when people haven't cried for years, and you can imagine what's been blocked up, So it's.
I mean, we're going to start wrapping up soon, JotePrakash, but this is just a question I really want to answer in response to what you were just talking about. Where's the balance for a man between showing too much emotion and showing not enough emotion?
Yeah, such amazing questions. Balance between showing too much and not enough. Yeah. Okay, so even just to think about balance for a moment, because I truly believe that we are in this life to have a human experience, and it's not meant to be perfect. I'll just place that as a caveat before I talk about anything else. Because like, we're supposed to be messy as a way of learning and growing and growing our soul. And like, when I think about scales, in order for me to tip back to the middle point, to the central point, I have to go too far that way, and then too far that way, and then slowly start to just sort of rock my way back into the middle. And so when I think about emotion and how that relates to your question, I definitely was overly emotional, I think. But I would say I was like very emotional and very reactive when I was younger, and probably like, I was just emotional about everything. And that led to its own cohort of challenges. and then coming into yoga meditation, being like, I need to sort of have more like composure, and then feeling like I'm trying to contain myself a bit much, and then just this natural flow of when the grief wants to move me, I'll move with it. Right, you know, when the rage wants to move me, I'll move with it. I'm like trying to get into that space where I'm just open. And it's like, if I'm not feeling any, I've not felt any emotions for a while, that's great. I might just feel really balanced for a few weeks or whatever, you know, and then suddenly some rage just presents itself, and it's out of the blue, and it's like, and I can always feel this moment where you have to decide to go into catharsis. You have to sort of like, imagining that you're like holding like a jar, you know, you've got the jar, it's full of your emotion, right? Yeah. And it's like it's built up, it's right, it's like bubbling up to the roof of this, it's hitting the lid of the jar. I'm the one that has to screw it and be like, okay, I'm actually going to allow myself to give myself space to feel that emotion. And
so you've got control instead of the emotions having control over you. But yeah, is that okay?
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, I suppose it's like making that choice to unscrew the lid and let it out when it feels. I don't even want to use the word appropriate, because sometimes it just takes you, and it's appropriate because it's taking you. You know, it's because the emotion is taking you. It means that it's appropriate. Find a space. Try not to hurt anyone, including yourself. That's obviously a big thing, is do no harm. Like, don't scare people if you can. But I think it's really hard, that, because if you start screaming, everyone in the house and everyone in the whole neighborhood starts thinking, because we're not accustomed to emotion. So there is a bit of like a sort of like learning to just be okay with, actually, you might upset a few people around the edges, but as long as you don't hurt anyone, it's all right. And yeah, holding space for yourself. So I've really tried, and like, and the car's a nice container for it, but also just like sitting and actually touching myself. And often, like, I do a self-love practice and things, and just touch myself in a tender way, in a loving way, and that can bring up so much emotion. Or play some beautiful music.
Body. Yeah, that really brings you into the body. That's that's interesting. That's something I think us women are a lot more in tune with. But you know, that's a great practice to offer men. Just to, you know, is it just like literally just, you know, touching your arms and your body and bringing yourself into awareness of your physical body, like non-sexual? I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I when I'm doing the sacred sexuality courses and things, like, I'm literally guiding practices, and I'm offering different practices that can go as, it can be non-sexual. It can be like, if you think about the difference between sensuality and sexuality, like, it can be sexual, just touching and enjoying the sensations in the body. Or of course, yeah, it could be sexual as well. It could be like actually getting your sexual energy moving, and that brings its own that's a whole another topic, and I know we want to wrap up, so
for another show.
Too much, yeah.
All right. JotePrakash, what are your final words to men out there? What have I missed something that you'd really like to share with men about? Whatever, you can just say whatever you like.
I mean, I feel that we're in this time of great humbling, and I feel that the Hopi prayer, the more we hold on to the riverbanks, the more that we try and actually, like, I talked a bit about control today. The more we try and have like this control, I think men, we try so hard to be in control of everything. We want our partners to be a certain way. We want our lives to be a certain way. We want our businesses to be a certain way. We want our day to be a certain way. And if you go, even in the self-development world, it's like routine and structure, and it's great to a certain extent, right? It works to a certain extent. But the reality is we don't have that control. And we just need to surrender. We just need to, like, I don't even know where I'm going with that. But I
Let
feel
go
something
of
inside
control.
of me. Yeah.
Maybe it's faith in something.
Yeah. And I think right now I'm trying to have too much control over my words and things. And this recognition, what's been big for me is this recognition that I'm working with all these different energies. Like, we're working with all these different energies and other people, and they all have life. Like that's how it's supposed to be. It's life meeting life. It's like, for me, that the one thing that matters more than anything in the world is relationship, relational connection with other people, because they're the people. This is what I want to say. That they're the people that are going to show you your shit and show you your blind sides before you even want to look at it. So I've had a couple of people in my life recently that have kind of like taken themselves into this more of this like spiritual path of like, yeah, relationships, you know, and but like this path of enlightenment. And it's like, for me, the path of enlightenment is as much about dark and descending into our pain and grief and triggers and letting ourselves be triggered by people in our life and working with that and returning to the heart no matter what. That's what's going to, because we talk about unconditional love, but for the only way you actually know whether you I've said this before, actually, the only way that you ever know if you've truly kind of cracked unconditional love is if you can be with your family and your friends and your partner and everything's pissing you off and you still bring a bit of love into that.
Yeah, and I think everyone can relate to that. That's that. I love that. Wow. Okay, JotePrakash, where can people find you? And if you send me through your links, I'll add them in the description under the video.
Thanks. Yeah. Starting with my website, it's www.joteprakashsingh.co.uk. I'm called The Creativity Wizard on Instagram, and on Facebook we have a community project called The Rising Dawn Sanctuary. So you can find us on Facebook and Instagram with The Rising Dawn Sanctuary. So that's like, yeah, and we've got an app. So it'd be cool if anyone wants to download our app. You can get it on the App Store and Google Play. It's called RDS Village. It's Rising Dawn Sanctuary Village.
And what tell us a little bit about the app. What does it do? Oh.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good, really great place for people to start if they are interested in anything I've talked about. Because I've already uploaded quite a lot of stuff, but I'm going to be uploading a lot of content around. The main intention of the app is for people to create a daily practice that serves them and helps them just center themselves in this crazy world.
I love it. I love that. That's great. And does the app cost money?
It's free to download, and then you can get a lot of stuff for free. And there is a premium plan where you're going to get live sessions with me and things.
Oh, that's great that you've got that free aspect. Thank you so much for offering that in service to others. That's a beautiful gift. So yeah, any final words and we will wrap up?
Just thank you, Gemma, for your work in doing this. And I feel really like, and I feel this with a lot of women in my life as well now at this time, and you really emulated it. You really trying to understand men without judgment. That really means a lot to me. because that I can actually feel safe enough to say that I do feel lust and I do feel like a predator sometimes, and I don't know why, and it upsets me as much as it does anyone else when I am in that state. Is the way that we are going to move forwards. So we're not going to move forwards by pretending that we're not lustful sometimes, or we're not predatory. You know, we're not going to move forwards if we pretend that that's just not happening anymore. We don't go there and we never touch that ever again. That's how we're going to actually create it, just running our lives in the shadows.
Yes.
So thank you so much for your understanding and openness and wonderful questions. It's actually really helped me just sink a little deeper into a few different aspects of my life. Appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. It's been a beautiful gift to spend this time with you, and you're very blessed, I feel, because you're so young with this incredible awareness, and, you know, just to see where this is going to take you, big things happening for you.
Thank you, Gemma.
Okay.
Peace.
I'll stop the recording. You can stay on if you like. Bye, everyone. I'll be back in a couple of days with another episode of Heart Warriors.